Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys an old school album review. And today we're going to be looking into this album's 10-year anniversary, and it's from one of my favorite bands. And as you can see below the title, today we're going to be looking into Wormwood by the Acacia Strain. This is the band's fifth album, released on July 20th, 2010 through Prosthetic Records. Now, this is the first time I've ever reviewed any of albums from this band, and I mean I've seen them live 4 times, but I've never talked about any of their albums. And this is of course their fifth album, following up to their previous album, which came out in 2008, Continent, which is probably my favorite Acacia Strain album. But this album, it's like this, but Acacia Strain, like some people would label them as deathcore or metalcore, which I don't really consider them that. They're just like a hardcore band, but just heavier than most hardcore bands, you know what I'm saying? They also have little hints of death metal a bit, and even some doomy kind of stuff, especially in when they slower kind of tempo variation of songs. Just the production on this album is great, and just Vincent Bennett's vocals, he could do the really just kind of lower kind of guttural stuff, and he has some really sick vocals. The guitar work from original and former guitar player DL, just the riffs and just the guitar tone on this album is just great. Bass wise, former bassist Jack Strong's bass is pretty audible, and the drumming from my homie Kevin Boutot is just really great. And as you can see, I have my copy, which is signed by Vincent Bennett and Kevin Boutot. Well, I had them sign it in that sense. Well, there are only 2 members that are on this album. They're still in the band. But yeah, I've pretty much rambled on for too long. Let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is the song The Beast, which the band sort of blasts through with some really great guitar work, which is pretty much, in my opinion, their heaviest to date. And it's pretty much due to the A-string guitars with a deeper kind of sound. And as no one has heard previous Acacia Strain albums would ever sort of question the heaviness of the guitars on this. And I just feel I don't know. And the song also has a guest appearance from Jamie Jossa of Hatebreed. I don't know. It's his vocals along with Vincent's kind of sound different. Like Jamie has sort of that mid sort of hardcore yells, while Vincent has sort of that low kind of gutturals to it, which kind of the two kind of contrast each other. And moving on to The Hills Have Eyes, which starts very kind of very rhythmic hardcore vibe, and the drums are just fast, and Vincent vocals kind of vary a little, but it pretty much makes every word count. And I really like how he really just enunciates. You could definitely know he's obviously screaming, but you can definitely tell that you can definitely hear what he is singing, and you can understand what he says right here, despite all the screams and stuff. Then we move on to BTM FDR, which the beginning of this kind of seems a little bit weird to me. It feels like Vincent's sort of screaming over the television, in the background, which kind of gives it a very kind of horror movie. But then it sort of develops into lyrically against a protest against Christianity. It kind of sounds very personal lyrics, and I feel Vincent doesn't hold Christianity too high in his mind. And I feel the song progressively seems to get more just ferocious, with just very kind of variations within the lead riffs, and some really just harder chugging for more sort of the massive breakdowns. And just musically, it just sounds very evil sounding. And then we go into Ramirez, which is probably my favorite song on this album. It just comes with a very just smooth lyrical transition, and then some really just great riffing. And this song just makes you want to just bang your fucking head. And I love how just the lyric says there is Hail Mary the Virgin for I can't fucking take this anymore. And I just love around near the 2-minute mark is where Vincent screams I don't give a fuck, and it has sort of a delay stutter effect, which kind of sounds very mainstream, but it just fits nicely. And I just love the tempo, and just the pacing of the song overall is great. Moving on to the next song on the album, which is called Terminated, and there's some really great guitar moments in this song. And I just love sort of the slowdown, the verses and the slides at the end. And being at this band just can get extremely repetitive. You can appreciate sort of these parts than you should have, and it shows more effort in terms of progression, instead of having the same stuff over and over again. And moving on to Nightman, which I feel lyrically it sounds a little bit corny, and just the way that Vincent screams kind of sounds weird. But I feel this is kind of my least favorite on this album. I don't know. No, especially the chorus can sound a little bit annoying, but overall, but it's an okay song. moving on to the next song on the album, which is called The Impaler, which this song is just had like the nice variations of the guitar riffs on here and some pretty fast drumming, and just the drums I feel like in my opinion take a bigger role on this song than in previous, and the guitar riffs kind of like have more thought and inspiration put into them, and I just like how the lyrics sort of like flow through effortlessly and through the scream, and I feel like it's just could be used as like a focal point of the album. It's just catchy, and I like the sort of like the lyric transition. Moving on to Jonestown, which displays a great variety of what the album has to offer. It has sort of like all the lows and highs of the album, and an interesting like lead riff, which has a pretty solo in there, which sounds really cool, but I feel like it's kind of like muffled in the background, like it shouldn't be important. And the song sort of like, I don't know, it's a pretty good song. Moving on to Bay of Pigs, like this song is just ball-crushingly heavy. Another one of my favorite songs on this album. It's pretty much up there with Ramirez. And then we move on to the Carpathian, in which I feel like this is pretty much where the band like experiments with sort of like electric sounds and delays, which are delightful. But I kind of wish there was like a little bit more of that. And I just waited throughout this album to expect something experimental and progressive, and overall I was kind of like disappointed. Now don't get me wrong, all these songs are good and fun to listen to, but listening to this album top to bottom, I really wish, I feel like there could have been something more in there. Anyway, next song on the album is called Unabomber, which at this point of the album, you wonder if Vincent was sort of able to talk after recording this album. I just feel like this album is just as heavy with just no intermission, no break. It's just no bullshit, just gets right to the point from top to bottom. And then the album closes with Tactical Nuke, which is an instrumental, and this is a pretty interesting song. It's just pretty much the same riff. It starts off with a build up with the drums and stuff, and it just goes boom, 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 which that riff kind of like repeats throughout, but then overall as the song progresses, it's just the tempos of the song just gets gradually slower and slower, which I don't know, it can be a little bit repetitive, but overall it's one of my favorite songs from the Acacia strain, and I think they pretty much would close this. That's pretty much the last 2 times I saw them, they would close with Tactical Nuke. Now overall, Wormwood by the Acacia strain is a pretty good album. So if I have to give this album a score, I'm probably going to give this probably a solid 8 out of 10. And so yeah, that's my review of Wormwood. Guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video, and as always, keep it metal.